two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, we're going to get started. Another ambitious schedule. This is the second of 3 joint Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance meetings for the purpose of reviewing operating budgets. Today, for the reference, is Thursday, January 24th, and our first department is Parks and Brad. Oh, Adam. I didn't look up. No, I didn't look up. No, I didn't look up. I saw Brad there, and I thought he was coming up. That's right. Brad is Parks.
Don't know me. I'm Adam Parks.
Adam is Parks.
Adam.
Adam is Parks.
I know. I know he's Parks. But no, I was looking at.
It's on his
I was looking at Brad, and I thought he was coming up. Okay, go ahead, Adam.
Just so you guys know, I'm the Public Works Foreman now. I've been that for about a couple of years. I also oversee the Parks Department. The Parks Department.
There we go.
Thank you. So the Parks Department manages a few fields in town. Let me tell you a little bit about them and what they are. We manage or maintain the town grounds, the tennis courts here in center of town, Acorn Hill Ball Field, Center Field, West River Field, the Woodbridge Athletic Fields, the walking trails, and I think that's about it. And the cemetery on Route 67.
They play ball down there?
Not anymore, no. No. That's about it.
Anything in particular you want to mention? I mean, your budget is. I got to choose my words here. I made a mistake, didn't I?
Yeah, that's.
Your budget is pretty straightforward.
It is straightforward, but going forward with the employees, excuse me. I'd like to ask for a little increase in that line item for our seasonal employees because I've done my homework. We're a little low, and I'm having trouble finding guys to work. $14, $15, $16 an hour is not the way to encourage kids to work that. They'd rather work inside, in air conditioning. Yeah. And I've talked to Haynes, O&G, they're starting their employees seasonally at $20 an hour. Granted they're working with heavier equipment, but still, that's where they're going. They're not coming here. So I'd like. We have 2 full-time employees. The part-time is 3 of them. One's a college kid. The other 2 run from, beginning of March and all the way to the end of November. So I'd like to increase one of those a little bit, or actually the college kid and one of the seasonals. One seasonal, he stays here. He's been here for years, and he's happy where he's at. And he's an older gentleman, and he cuts the grass every day, and that's that.
So you're contemplating increases in this budget?
Yes.
How many, what's the hourly rate?
What the hourly rate? It's probably off the top of my head, I didn't write it down there. You're talking from 1640.
It's in the
Is it?
last.
It's on the last page, Joe.
Is it?
Joe.
Oh, it is. I'm sorry. $18 and $16. The college kid, you're talking. He makes $13.64 an hour. I want to bump that. What's that? Now. I'd like to, bring that to 16. And the other individual, he makes $16.85 an hour, if I'm not mistaken, and I want to bring him up to $18 an hour. And I think that's very competitive. And understand, we had a seasonal employee that left us early in the season, and we put an ad in the paper. We had 1 person. Granted, it was a little late, but still 1 person. That's not good.
Are these people you're talking about experienced people? Have they worked for you before? Or
No.
They're new hires.
Yeah.
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 I mean, my only frame of reference is I have a son who's a college kid.
Yep.
And he said he wouldn't work for minimum wage, but he was really happy working for $15 an hour.
The colleges, they're easy to deal with.
Yeah.
They're great to have, but it's short, and they work hard. Granted, I mean, I push these guys. They sweat their they're sweating every day. They don't rest, and they get the job done, so I think they deserve it.
So then, Adam, you're gonna, you wanna change that 50320 line?
That's correct.
No, that's
It's already.
Oh, it's in there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's an increase. So
It's an
Oh,
increase.
okay. Oh, so what you're saying is that's why it's up 10%?
That's right.
I got you, okay.
Right. So going down the budget, there's really not many changes. The medical expenses, that's a given. It's going up. It's no question about it. The rental, portable restrooms we have on every ball field, 7 portable restrooms we have. They're going up in price, and that's just the way it is. And there's only one game in town. We used to have a company that was much cheaper, but now a company bought everybody out, and they can name their tune. So we're stuck. So we have to raise that price, no ifs, ands, or buts. And other than that,
Yeah, it seems pretty standard. Anybody have any questions for Adam? Okay. I have more problems with
I
these
don't
two
know, if
than
I colored
anything
my
in
hair,
town.
you guys would be in trouble.
Oh, yeah, if you ever went blonde, I'd quit. I'd leave.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, take care. All right, next is Brad.
Brad,
1370, which is building maintenance.
building maintenance. And for those of you that are new or don't know me, I am Adam's brother, Brad Parsons, and I am the building maintenance foreman for the town of Woodbridge. I take care of building maintenance and the Beecher Road School pool and every town building that the town has. I can name them to give you an example. Would be the Thomas Darling House, Center Building, Old Firehouse, New Firehouse, Public Works, Town Hall. And on occasion, on request, is even we do work at Beecher Road School if we need to. Just about anywhere in town.
For those who were not here the other night, Tony, you want to just mention again about salaries?
So, the salary line, there are no cost of living adjustments in any of the salary lines. So, if you see an item in there, it usually is a result of a step increase or some other adjustment, but there are no cost of living adjustments as our contracts are currently up, our union contracts.
Okay. Any questions?
There is,
Paper is what it is.
No, in other words, they're
There-
gonna negotiate, they're gonna
We're negotiating.
negotiate. The money actually to pay them is in,
Well, we have, we don't have it in the line items,
it's in contingency.
so
Until
we
they
have
settle
to
the
use
contract.
contingency funds if
But
there's an
that
adjustment.
may change based on what
We're-
you agree to in the
Correct.
contract.
Yeah,
Right.
Correct.
So right now, it's only mandatory contractual increases.
So there
Currently,
are
there's
no
no
contractual increases
So you
because
said
the
just
contracts.
step increases, right?
Yeah, they're step increases.
those would be in
right.
those would be in your numbers.
Right, that's what's in
Right,
here now.
That's
Right.
correct. If there's a few here and there.
So are there any questions for Brad on building maintenance?
I mean, the part-time maintenance line item is decreased.
that went down. We had a 25-hour part-time custodian. He's getting up there in age and he wanted to reduce his hours and we found a way to redo that. They go from 25, I believe it's down to 12 now.
Oh,
And we take a full-time custodian that we have during the day, and part of his responsibility now is to sort of go over to the PD, it's at the police department, and sort of cover for about an hour and a half a day. So that, and it's a good idea to have a part-time guy over there on the weekend, trash, bathrooms. It's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 4 hours a day.
okay.
Yeah.
So you figured out a way to kind of
Yeah, we
cover
figured out a
the
way to
other
cover
hours.
his reduced hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the number of town buildings is supposed to go up by 1. What's that building that you're adding?
I might have added the Old South School on Johnson Road. I don't think it was on last year's sheet.
Okay.
I believe that's what it was. We've been over there a few times, done some work.
Anything else?
Thank
Go ahead.
you.
If something, for example, if the firehouse or something like that, what does that do to the budget?
As far as,
If we added a building, like, for example, if that was put into use, so to speak, as opposed to what it is right now, does that do anything?
maintenance-wise,
significant?
not really.
Okay.
Not really at all. I mean, cleaning, maybe we might be able to work around that and move our custodians around so we can get them over here to clean the building. We have a full-time day custodian and we have a full-time night custodian. They're very appreciative they have a job, so I don't see any reason maybe we could move people around. It's always an option.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else?
And
How many full-time people do you have? You have 3,
in building maintenance,
3 part-time
We have 2 full-time building maintenance technicians. There's myself and Bob Hauser as a technician, full-time.
Anything else? Okay.
That's it.
Next is pool and gym, 15,
Pool
15.
and gym is
That's a flat budget.
Flat.
So, any
Does very
questions
well.
otherwise, though, for that? No?
none?
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. As usual.
As usual. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Next is recreation, which is 1510.
The best I can do with shorts.
I'll say.
I'm John Adamovich, Director of Recreation. Dave Cohen, my senior supervisor, and my office manager, Jim Franco. This year, we put together a really good budget. We worked together with Mr. Cordero and the Board of Finance representative and the Recreation Commission, and we went line by line by line. Dave helped me he's the senior supervisor and he's in charge of all the after-school programs, how many children, what we need. We looked at all the numbers, we looked at what we could do, if we can cut person out here or a person out there and back and forth. And we were able to drop the part-time seasonal from 393, 272 to 389, 201. A couple of the items had to go up. We're trying to get our bank charges in line. And the other one was programs and publicity. That's something that we couldn't do. In there is the bus transportation for summer camp, and that's an automatic fee that comes from our bus transportation people. Well, we have no control over that, so we just went up a little there. But by going through the budget line by line and doing everything together correctly, we were able to cut the budget about $2,000 from last year. If you go back to the last page, page 17, in your recreation, the budget that we gave you, flip over the next page, which would be 18, but it's not numbered. That would be the town revenue projections. And we went on Rec Track. We got the exact numbers, exactly of 2018 that we did. And you'll see the adopted budget was 302,000 looking to come in, but the actual budget projected to be 283,794, and that's what we're proposing for the new 2019-2020 season. So those numbers are exact. Those are exactly, there's nothing built in there like you try to make it look a little better like this, but no, this is exactly what came through, And Andrew helped us. He did a really good job of teaching us how to, look at the numbers and get them correctly, and that's what we did. So this is our budget. Yes. Yes. We were at 586,000, and we reduced it to 584, 2,000, and then we again this year looked at it even tighter and saw what we could do. That doesn't mean that won't hire extra people. If a program gets big, we like to keep our numbers 1 to 5, 1 to 6 counselors per children. And if a program gets big, we have to hire one more person, we will. But most of the time, Dave fits them right in, and 90% of our people are on minimum wage. So I'm a little concerned about if the state goes to a minimum wage of $15 an hour and starts going up, it's going to really impact our budget a lot. I hope they phase it in so it doesn't hurt us all at once.
But don't most of your programs pay for themselves?
Those are revolving account. We have a revolving account, and a revolving account doesn't run unless it pays for itself or breaks even.
Right.
So, yeah, that's how we do it. Yes, most of those programs we do that way. An example is we ran guitar, and we needed 8. We got 4. Then we got it up to 6. So we ran the program at 6, and we were behind by 2. But then we ran the program again. That was in the fall. We ran the program in the winter, and we needed 8 to run the program. We got 18. So the 18 covered the 2 that we didn't, because we wanted to run the program. If people see the program, then they'll come out, and they did. It's a very good program. and that's how it works. I got that from Tony. Tony said, you know, it was helping me on how to set up programs, get them running like this, and then see if the program runs the next time. If it doesn't, cancel it. If it runs really good, you keep going. Do it. So, a lot of kudos to the Recreation Commission and our liaisons from the boards.
There are 3 commissioners here.
Yes,
Back.
we get a lot of
Thank
good
you.
support.
Thanks for coming.
We get a lot of support. That's it.
Anybody have any questions? No?
I do, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I just want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. So on page 6, you have a proposed budget for the fitness center of $30,000. There's a night supervisor and a day supervisor. That's correct?
Correct.
And that's what it costs you to actually run the program. Okay. Then on page 15, you have anticipated income.
Oh, okay.
And it says, in the middle, it says total fitness center, and the total is $1,698. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then, one other question. Under major issues, and you've been talking about this with us for a number of years, you mentioned not having your own dedicated space.
Yes.
And the fact that now your space is contracted.
Yes, but we're very close.
I'm sure you are.
Believe me.
Closer than you think.
So, have you considered at any point, the old firehouse as maybe a main, place for you to be, as opposed to, being at the school, and maybe having a satellite office at the school, since you do run a lot of programs for the kids?
Yes and no. It's like having a ship, and you're the captain of the ship, but yet you're stationed in the tugboat behind the ship. And every time there's a problem, something like this, you'd have to get from there to the ship and get back up and on, back and forth. It's better to be in the building where 90% of our programs are held, right there. So it's better there. If we had our own space, I mean, years ago, we were gonna build outside of Beecher Road School, right to the south, we were gonna build a 2,000-foot square building with a roof on it that could go up another 2,000, make another building on top like that, which never came to fruition. But that's what we'd like to do. We'd like to be there. We did have, that space we were in was excellent when we were in the classroom. That was an excellent spot. But the space we're in now, even though it's small, it's an even better spot for us because we're right there at the front lines, we're at the front door. We open the door, we let people in. The security is top notch because we're right there. We don't let anybody in unless we see them. The other way, we were up in the other room. We'd have to look at the camera, come all the way down. By the time you walk all the way down and walk all the way back up, we're right there. So if we could have just a little more space where we are right now, but we can make it do. I mean,
We are
there's no
making it
rush in
do.
this. We're making it happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, you also state that you don't have access to the gyms on the weekend.
Right, we don't have access to Beecher North Gym,
Okay.
because the building's closed, and they lock off the building and they secure it, and we don't have the code to go into the north building, so we can't use it. So if something happens to, South Gym, we can't use it, we can't go to North Gym.
So you are using the south gym, it's
Oh,
just
yes.
you don't have access to
Yeah, we use the
north.
South Gym Saturdays and Sundays.
Okay,
We just don't use just the North Gym. And during the season, like when, the extended day program is very good with us. When Beecher School decides to use the South Cafeteria for an assembly or something like that, they have to set up the day before, and then the next day is their concert or whatever. They let us know, and then we're allowed to use Beecher, take our program up to Beecher North. So it's,
I see.
we went from one good superintendent to another one.
okay,
That's the way I look at it. They're both very kind.
okay, great, thank you.
So again,
What's
just
this?
taking up
Can read it.
what Sandy said, why are you anticipating so much less income, John, in the fitness center?
It's been moved so many times. It's been moved so many times, and people don't know where we're going, if we're gonna close, if we're gonna be open. We move from one space to another. I think if we got one dedicated space, we could start, advertising for it and start working for it. And also remember that the town employees can use the fitness center, the fire department, the police department, and all the employees of the town of Woodbridge use the center for free, as long as you're an employee of the town of Woodbridge. We get an awful lot of policemen using the program, and a few firemen, like that. But I think that's the case of why it's dropped so much with the family memberships and things like that. People just, not know if we're gonna be there.
And then the hours too. I mean, we only open in the morning,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then you open it late at night. So, like, if people like to work out during the day, we're closed. So,
That was another thing, when we cut the budget the last time,
Yeah.
we cut a lot of the hours out of there, we brought it down, it was higher than 30,000, it was like 46,000 or something, we dropped it down to 30,000. We keep dropping it, but we cut the hours to do that, and that impacts it. But if you have a nice place, all set up, ready to go, and we can use it all the time, we could really work at it.
I mean, the same thing's true with the pool because we only have it from 11 to 12:45 daily. If people want to swim times during the day, we don't have it. You have the school using it, you have the aquatic club using it. So it's
The pool is used every single day of the week. Every day.
And, it's used every single day of the week, but if you look at it, the thing is spotless.
Clean.
Brad keeps that pool top notch. I mean, that's gotta be one of the
I
cleanest
tell you.
pools I've ever seen, And after this last shutdown, we really came back with a beautifully clean building. Beautifully
Yeah.
clean building, which was nice, and we're trying to keep it that way. And that's one thing I'd like to express a little bit on, is that, we have a lot of work in the office. Jim does a lot of work with recreation like this. He's by himself, but John DeMeo works with Jim in the office. He's part-time, but he's there almost all the time. All his hours are spent with Jim in the office and doing all the paperwork and doing everything like that. So that might be a position that we might want to look into. That was a full-time position for recreation, and it was taken away a few years ago when the Parsons' mom, Claire, passed away. Then it was brought back as a part-time position, but not a full-time position. And the other one is the maintenance. We started off with a full-time maintenance. We went to three-quarter maintenance. We went to half maintenance, and now we're down to part-time maintenance. Two part-time people during the week coming in and just trying to keep up with it. And with the usage of the Beaches South pool and gym and everything like that, we could really use some more hours, but we can't go over 29 hours. I think we have to stay under like that. So those are two concerns that I have.
Anything else for recreation? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next is, and I see they're both here, Registrar of Voters, Department 1130.
Hi, Amanda Dickerson. I'm the Republican Registrar of Voters.
Elia Alexiadis, the other registrar.
Okay.
They're proud Democrat too. It's perhaps the only town office where the political party is enshrined by statute in the role.
Okay.
But our department is run strictly nonpartisan, so.
That's correct.
You'll notice that our budgets,
all
numbers
over the
have gone
place,
down
yeah.
considerably because we, in our May election, and we don't have a November election in that fiscal year, so that cuts our budget down considerably.
That's right, we have it this way.
Yeah, it's every other year, we're up and down, up and down. Does not make your job any easier, but.
The biggest project I think we have coming up in that fiscal year is the canvas again, because we did canvas last year, and the November towns have to do a canvas every year, but because we're a May town, we don't do a canvas when we have an election because it runs simultaneously time-wise, and it'd be too complicated to do that. And also the state statute, you can only do a canvas so many months before an election, so that gives us a problem with that. We did have a canvas this last year, and for the first time, we sent out about 800 letters to people who had not voted in 4 years. Normally, we just send out letters to people that the post office says has moved or other ways that we know that they've moved. But this year, we also sent out 800 letters to people who had not voted in the last 4 years, which made quite a few of the voters inactive.
Yeah, what happens if they don't return the letter? If they return the letter and tell us that they've moved or they're still in town, we act accordingly. We either keep them on the rolls or we remove them. But if they just don't return the letter, then we make them inactive, which means that they can still vote on election day if they show up on the polls, and we reactivate them.
Most of the time, they have moved out, which makes our percentage of voters at the elections more, with a better picture.
Yeah, we
Clearer
don't,
picture.
the, having more people, well, we want to have an accurate voter roll, but having people who have moved that are still on the rolls artificially suppresses the calculation of voter turnout, so that's another reason to do
So
it.
out of those 800 letters, how many people did you take off the voter rolls then?
We took about half of them off.
Wow.
What I found when I was doing it was interesting. Most of the people that we sent the letters to were in the 30-year-old range, because they moved out of the house, but they never let us know. And that was interesting to see.
Some states will send notice to the old town or to the old state when they register another. I mean, statewide we get notice when someone registers. It's
Yes.
taken off automatically. But when people go to other states, some of the states send notice either to the Secretary of State or directly to us, and some don't. So that's what the canvas is for, because we rely on other, national change of address notices and other lists that we get from the Secretary of State and elsewhere which gives us information that people are likely to have moved. So.
What does Connecticut do? Does Connecticut send out
We do.
notice?
I do.
If
Because
it's going to come, it comes from our office.
if somebody registers, fills out a registration card and it says, where would you register last? If they put in another state, I send that state a copy of the registration card with a letter saying this person is now registered in Connecticut, please take them off your rolls.
So
we do
you would
that.
assume that most of the towns in Connecticut do that, or not?
Not necessarily.
I'm not making that assumption, no.
So it's not,
It's not a requirement.
So it's not a
it's
state thing, it's not
No,
like the
it's a-
state
that's
gets
a-
it,
No.
and
a
they,
courtesy.
it's individual communities that do it.
One of the things I did try to do, for example, I know people who've moved to Florida, but they didn't tell me. I can't take them off, even if they're good friends of mine, and I visited them down there. Can't take them off unless you have something tangible to prove that they've gone. So sometimes I can go into the Florida registration area if I know the county they're in, which is the hard part, and I can print that and send them a letter saying, here's my proof that you've registered in Florida. If this isn't right, send me something back in 30 days, and if I don't get something back in 30 days, I can take them off.
Or if they haven't voted in 4 years, and we pick it up that way and send them a canvas letter, then we make them inactive, and then
Yeah.
is it 4 years after that they come off, or 6?
4 years.
4 years, yeah. So basically, after 8 years, chances are they're coming off.
We go through our inactive files, and if anybody's been inactive for 4 years, we can make them off.
So something like the Amity referendum, which is very poorly participated in. What, because I've talked about, why do we do a referendum? Why don't we just, nobody shows up. And when they do, the people who show up vote for it. What would you imagine that costs? Ballpark. The town of Woodbridge.
What does it cost?
What does it cost the town of Woodbridge to conduct the Amity
Well,
referendum?
we say an
5,000?
average of $3,000
Of
for everything.
$3,000?
Yeah, that's an average.
I mean-
And when we have a big election, then we need more staff.
Yeah.
And that one, we have smaller staff, but I'd say an
No,
average of
That's not
3,000.
the end of the world.
Yeah, and we try to keep that as close to the bone as possible, because we don't want a lot of people sitting around doing nothing. We don't want the townspeople coming in and thinking we're wasting their money. So we're really trying to do it with a minimum staff, but we have certain statutory
Oh, yeah.
requirements
Yeah.
and minimum staffing. So even with a minimum staff, you may walk in and think that it looks like overkill. But we do try to keep it to a minimum. So we might have less than 10 poll workers on a referendum, whereas we'll have more than 20 on a regular election, and even more on a primary, where we're essentially running 4 elections in one room.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing that's happened is we have, over the recent years, not just this year, but we're required to conduct election day registration, which is really setting up, it's not technically not an official polling place, but it's essentially setting up a whole nother location. We do it in the cafeteria, but we still need to staff that with people, with computers, with ballot boxes.
Special
to-
ballots.
special ballots. So that adds 3 to 5 people for any given, for the elections where that's applicable. It's not applicable for primaries, it's applicable for regular elections.
It's not, we don't do that for referendum either.
And then,
Anything else? Any other questions?
What's the dollar for advertising legal ads, or is that kind of?
we no longer are required to place paid legal ads. We
Okay.
put articles in the paper, and the local papers are kind enough to publish them. We put in $1 as a placeholder. That's all. It can be zero.
We're just not
is-
sure if it'll change.
I don't know if it's gonna come
I don't know
back.
what you could get for
Well,
a dollar.
No, we're not getting anything. No, it was just,
Yeah.
and Karen asked me about it when we submitted it.
Okay.
Like the
So,
town clerk takes over most of the advertising now, and their budget's really high for that. It's horrendous.
Yeah, it is.
That's about the only classified ad left in the paper, is the legal notices.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry, yeah, I know we gotta do this. Stephanie mentioned when she was here the other night that there's a possibility of early voting coming to Connecticut. So she didn't put anything in her budget because obviously it hasn't happened. But, are you anticipating that impacting your budget at all, or just wait and
So-
see?
We had a legislative committee meeting the other day that I attended, and there's a number of bills that have been introduced that would change some of our procedures, including, extending the hours of Election Day registration, because that cuts off at 8 o'clock, even if you're in line, because of the way the statutes are interpreted now. And yeah, I think there are various early voting proposals, and not all the bills are out yet. So there might be no excuse absentee balloting. There might be early voting, and we don't know what it's gonna look
Right.
like. And frankly, we didn't get into the weeds of the actual bills that have been introduced so far, because, who knows what it's gonna look like once
Right.
if and when they finally pass. But, one way to do it is to set up an actual polling place in town hall or somewhere, which personally, I think that's a nightmare. Because now you have to have a machine, you have to have it secured, you have to have ballots. You don't just have to have the machine, but you have to have the ballots, and you have to secure them. There are logistical concerns. I favor suffrage. I want as many people to vote as possible. But each method has its potential concerns,
Thank you.
and they're controversial.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
attended a technology committee meeting. He's on the legislative committee, which is I'm from New Haven County, and so is he. So it's quite
Hope
interesting
so.
to be on these committees. And something like that would, if it's imminent, would have been brought up to us as far as the implementation, and that wasn't even on the agenda. So I don't think we need to worry about it at this point.
Okay, thank you.
But what we have, and I'll stop. But we have 162 towns.
169.
169 plus boroughs, and and the small towns smaller than ours, they have a very different voting experience or registration experience than the big cities, and particularly the big cities that have large numbers of college students, which makes things like Election Day registration very difficult for the big cities, as you've probably read about. So we all have different experiences, and so they're trying to they try and tinker with the around the margins.
Anything else? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean, are you ready?
We'll see you in May.
Okay, fire department,
Right.
department,
I don't have to move.
12:30.
I'm a little sick, so you gotta bear with me tonight.
Okay. The last time you came in on a scooter, so you're gaining on it.
Yeah, I'm gaining. Yeah. I just want to start off this evening, just to let you guys know, it's our 90th anniversary this year as the volunteer fire department, so it's a big milestone for us, as much as it is for the town of Woodbridge. So 90 years strong, so it's good. I want to read you guys something. This was the first meeting of the fire department on the evening of Thursday, March 14th, 1929, at the homes of James J. Wilson. It was decided to organize the Woodbridge Volunteer Fire Association. This was the first meeting, and they had 15 members at that time on the first time they went to organize. And right from there, it actually grew. They had constant meetings, and they were incorporated by April. So everything went really quick. Well, we also, since it's our 90th anniversary, we're gonna do a few things and create some posters and stuff like that, and artifacts that we have. This is from December 10th, 1938. This was the dedication for the old firehouse, which was the new firehouse at the time. The cost of the firehouse was $12,000 when they built it back in 1938.
Got good use out of that building, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the town got its money's worth.
Just a couple quick things, and this is just some of the history going back, and I'm just gonna abbreviate some of it. During 1929, the present Central Grammar School was completed, and the small district schools were disposed of. The Southeast School, located on Johnson Road, was the best suited for the fire headquarters, and bid of $1 was made by the department. This was accepted. At the particular time, there were 16 members living close proximity to the Johnson Road, whereas today, a majority reside in various districts of the town. In order to enlarge the school building for housing any apparatus, an old ice house on Amity Road was demolished, and the lumber used for remodeling purposes. Working evenings and Sundays, a suitable, tight addition was built and housed the apparatus for 8 years. Just another quick thing. So back on September 14th, 1929, the fire department, along with the town, had its first field day. It was right out in here. We actually have video of it. It's 8mm, and it's actually in digital format. And you can see Town Hall, you can see Center School, and they had different races and stuff like that. What they did, and I just thought this was interesting. So at that time, they didn't have a fire truck yet. They were looking to get one. The following day, Sunday, while the firemen were cleaning up the remains of the affair, the alarm sounded. At 10 a.m., the home of Dr. Hitchcock on Amity Road, formerly the home of Morris Tyler. Woodbridge had no apparatus. Therefore, the only course open to Chief Knowlton was to call help from Allentown, Seymour, and New Haven. The Woodbridge men did service in removing every piece of furniture, but even with the combined efforts of the three companies which responded, the building was completely destroyed. A loss of $35,000, the loss of the fine old building set people thinking, and immediately upon recall of an emergency conference was held in the courtroom of Town Hall, lasting from 5:30 p.m. to 11 o'clock p.m. In quotes, it was interesting to note that the previous to this time, help could not be obtained from neighboring departments. The discussion centered means of purchasing a 500-gallon per minute pumper, and whether to borrow the money or raise it by public subscription. The plan finally adopted was the mounting of a 75-gallon per minute pumper on a chassis already purchased by the firemen, a locomobile, and having a 165-gallon booster tank. Committee is known as the Fire Equipment Campaign Committee, was organized to raise the necessary funds. The campaign lasted 2 weeks, from November 3rd to November 17th, having raised $2,371.16. So, and the picture of the locomobile, this is just a photocopy of it. That was the first fire engine to Woodbridge. On October 21st, 1930, the town of Woodbridge received its first firefighter apparatus, the locomobile truck, with 75 gallons per minute pump, a 165-gallon booster tank with hose and necessary equipment. And just one more little bit. At a town meeting on September 1937, the town voted giving the Board of Selectmen the power to appoint a board of fire custodians to look into the matter of better fire equipment and housing. Custodians appointed were Robert Alcorn, Chairman, Roy Wildman, Secretary, and Chester Hitchcock, First Selectman. These men, working in conjunction with the Board of Finance and Chief Knowlton, decided the firehouse should be in a central location geographically. This meant a substantial reduction in insurance rates for a great many. A new 500-gallon per minute pumper was procured and housed in the new firehouse, which has ample room for 2 additional pieces of apparatus. Also having fine club rooms and facilities tending to create further attendance interest. So that's a little bit of the history going back to 29 and 1930. So it's actually come a long way with equipment and manpower and everything else.
That's amazing that you still have all those records.
Yeah, we have all the minutes going back, and we have a bunch of photos and everything else.
Wow.
I mean, the video of the field day is
That's a
pretty
hoot.
pretty unbelievable because
do another
you see
field day?
Town Hall and there's no trees, so you
Right.
can overlook Woodbridge. Everything was gravel for roads. There was no pavement. And Center School didn't have the long addition going on where the PD is housed now. So that was added later.
That's cool.
So,
Okay, now we've got the small numbers out of the way.
Back to reality.
this past year was extremely busy. We had a total of 758 calls this year. Last year was our busiest year at 521, so we surpassed that by about 45%, and we ended up with 750 calls this year. If you could see the graph on the screen.
Should we put the lights out?
Sure.
Just a section.
Just put those 2 there on.
Oh, thanks.
Won't open. So, I'm gonna go back to 2015. She's having a problem loading it. Back in 2015, we had 347 calls for the year. In 2016, we were at 485. Last year was our busiest year at 521, and this year we ended up at 758.
How many did you have
These
this
are-
past weekend?
These are
We
calendar
had-
years.
Yeah, these are calendar years. This past weekend, from January 1 until today, we've had 130 calls so far. So it started out as a pretty general year, probably averaging about 500, and with this past storm, we're definitely into the 600 range right now, and we're only in on January 24th. So
Because
it's
what do we have,
important
like
to
about
know.
100 calls for just the weekend, right?
Yeah, so it was quite busy this weekend. The other thing to show, and I hope she can get it up here. Yep, go to hours.
Oh, put the
Yeah.
calls up first. All right.
So just shift it.
Did you get any better focus or not? Okay, so last year we did 4,442 hours, man hours. That's extremely high for us, back in 2017. This year alone, back in 2018, we did 6,968 hours. That's hours that are on a scene. That's not back at the firehouse. That's not going over the equipment, truck crews, meetings, or any of that, or training. That's strictly incident hours. So you can see our spike right there. And it constantly goes back.
Let me
So-
jump in here a minute. And what that means about on scene is that after, particularly, I mean, after every call, there's work to do back at the firehouse. But after a major incident like a working fire, which we had several last year, major fires, the time back at the firehouse is as much as the time at the scene, because you are restocking the vehicles, you're cleaning and drying the hoses, you're getting, you don't have the luxury of time. You got to be ready for the next call immediately. So that's far from all the hours that are spent. That's just on.
So that's just to give you a idea of what we did last year. If you wanna start,
Put the,
sure.
Yeah.
So
I
you
mean,
can
it's just
see the,
remarkable.
The spike in it.
so we were
So it
hoping for
wasn't-
a regular year this coming year,
So this
and
this year, really, we had a couple big storms in here, so that reflects that. But overall, it was a busy year. Motor vehicle accidents were up, structure fires were up, calls for service were up. Everything was up across the board. So it wasn't specifically the storm. Some of these, they're weather driven. They're definitely up probably at least 100 calls from the previous year just based on the weather alone. And it just doesn't seem like the weather's getting any better either.
and I mean, last year was more than the hurricane years, right?
Yes.
So this graph doesn't go back far to our Superstorm Sandy or Hurricane Irene or the freak October snowstorm and things like that, but we blew right past those statistics this past year.
Okay, you want to start with the budget? Unless there's questions on that.
Oh, yeah, that's it for this?
Yeah, that's it. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah. And so what that means is that when we have more calls, we end up spending more money.
You want to go over the stuff that increased?
I would say the
Okay.
things that changed, Sean,
Okay.
not like clerical, .78. As we know, the salaries are subject to review,
Yep.
so. I would say the main one I wanted you to explain is communications radio that went from 0 to 56. I know that's something odd, but.
Okay, so,
New item.
yeah, so it's a new item, and this goes back to the new radio system that is going in, and it should be operation. We should be turning it on the end of May, the beginning of June. And there's a cost associated with this there's 6 sites total. One of the sites we're paying $1,300 a month for, that's the Seymour Tower in Seymour. That was a deal that was worked out. That's for rent. We also have 3 generators to maintain, one at RWA, one at Oak Lane, and one at AT&T on Litchfield Turnpike on the Shepherd's Farm site. There's also with that, bear with me. There's software and hardware. The computer system, the radio system is, it's like a computer now at each one of these sites, and there needs to be updates done at these sites to keep the radio up and going. It's like a Windows.
I just wanted to point out that
Sure.
you made a nice little chart here.
I didn't know if you had it.
Yeah, when you submitted it, it's the last page of the.
Yeah, it just be advised, that all this is gonna go to the actual radio committee, which I believe is meeting on February 5th.
Yeah.
5th. So this is all gonna be looked at, but, basically, it shows all the, expenditures for the radio system for next year. There's a deduct, because we were paying for T1 lines through the PD budget, also, maintenance on the old system, which worked out to be about $33,000. So that 33 should be coming out of the PD budget and going against this, so the increase to the town for next year would be roughly $23,330.
So this is, this isn't just for the fire department?
No, this is for fire, public
This is
works,
what we had
PD,
talked
this
about
is
in
the
the
public
past.
safety.
It's in your
system.
budget, it's showing
in our
you-
budget to
right.
maintain.
I was saying,
this.
the police department had nothing like
Right,
this, so.
yep. And we talked about, what budget it should go into, or if we should create another line, so we just decided at this point to put it in fire's budget, but we could always move it, but these are the costs that are gonna have to be paid out.
Okay, so you're saying that the police
Yeah, we gotta look for that.
should have
I'll coordinate
deducted
that with them, yeah.
33,000?
Yeah, we'll coordinate that with the
Okay.
police so that
I didn't
it's
understand.
reflected, yeah.
Okay,
So if you see it, you'll see it at the bottom of that page.
Okay.
So we've got
and do you
56.
anticipate these are ongoing expenses?
They're
or
gonna
these-
be ongoing,
Some of these,
yes.
are
And
some of them
yes.
one time?
No,
Or-
they're all gonna be ongoing. With the software and the hardware, that number's gonna change, and that's where the committee has to talk about it next week before we put it in for the following year's budget, because these numbers, software and hardware, are only reflecting 2 months. So we have to talk about that. And we may not even keep these, numbers in this year's budget, but we needed a placeholder right now. This is what it would cost, basically for the max right now for next year's budget.
So are you anticipating then that this will go up significantly? There's a potential for that the
Yes.
following year?
Yes.
Wow.
Was this anticipated when the whole proposal was being, or is this something that was unexpected? When the whole
We knew
consideration-
it was gonna go up. We were figuring there was two options. We were thinking one was gonna be in the $40,000 range, one was gonna be in the $80,000 range. So we knew this going in, and we're paying for maintenance now. We've been paying for maintenance on the old system, so
But that number
it's
is
something that
included-
has to be talked about in the radio committee. It's just a placeholder right now.
The current maintenance is part of the $33,000
Yeah, most of that
deduct.
33, right,
Correct.
right.
Mhm. The other lines, the radio system PM for the generators, remote monitor, the T1 lines, the Seymour Tower, propane, diesel, those are all our fixed costs every year. Those aren't gonna, they may fluctuate a few dollars here and there, but depends on storms, will depend on how much propane we use, how much diesel we use if we lose power at the sites.
But
What is-
what you're saying will increase is the software and hardware.
Most likely, yes, it will definitely increase next year because we'll have to pay for a full year if we decide to go that way.
Do we have a sense for what that's for? Is any of that
It's-
possible for us to cover under data processing or IT or some other, or, you know, is there any potential to gain some economies of scale by combining with some other resources in town?
So you're
This
not
is-
asking which department budget it goes under?
In
You're-
a sense, I am, but I guess what I'm saying is there any way that we could?
This is not when I
reduce this?
talk like a Windows computer, this isn't a regular Windows computer. You just order off of like CDW or go to the store and buy. This is specific from Motorola. So it's their own, there's no OS on it. It's their OS. So we're basically with them.
So this is the
So
ongoing maintenance
an
charge.
a regular
on-
IT company can't come in and manage the system.
This is the regular maintenance charge on the hardware and software.
Correct.
To Motorola.
Right, correct. And the only thing that we're a little unsure, and that's why we're gonna talk about it next week, is whether we need the hardware part of it. Now, the hardware, what's nice about, there's pros and cons to the hardware. The software we're gonna have to do, because if we don't do the software, say, the following year, it's eventually gonna kick up to us. When we have to upgrade, we have to go back and we're gonna have to buy the years we skipped. So if we're 3 years behind, we have to buy 3 years of updates. And whatever that number is, that's what we have to pay. So eventually we're gonna pay it. The hardware piece of it is basically like an insurance policy, where if a computer goes down or a GPS standard goes down or something with the system goes down, it's covered and they ship you out a new part. They have loaners, so we can put a loaner in until the new one comes in and they overnight it. So basically everything's covered, and we don't have, if a GPS time standard goes down and I wanna say they're about $40,000 or $45,000, we don't incur that cost. It's covered underneath that warranty that we're paying. So I think there is a little negotiating at that point, whether we wanna pay for the hardware or we don't wanna pay for the hardware. So that number may not be as high as it is right now. That number may come down, depending on which way we believe we need to go.
So the software represents 2 months, but the hardware could represent that one-time charge, that I understand that?
No, the hardware is gonna be a fee moving forward. Every single month, there's a fee for the hardware and software.
So on an annual basis, you're talking as much as $100,000 in additional ongoing charges if this represents 2 months of the year.
Correct.
Well, I think it's closer to 120.
It's 120 actually,
Yeah.
119.
But if we choose not to pay for the hardware, a couple of years down the line, if something goes wrong with the hardware.
That we're looking into, because I had the same question. And like I said, all we did is we have a placeholder. The committee has to meet and talk about it and figure out the best way to move forward.
Right.
I'm not the only one on the committee here.
Okay, so it could be either that we pay the back charges or that we pay full retail for service and parts and so on.
Correct.
Is this like a service contract?
It is.
like you.
And John, this is already, I mean, just to get back to my question, this is already economy of scale, because we're talking fire, police.
Fire, police, and public works.
It just happens to be right now in this budget, but it's already,
Correct.
there's no more economy of scale, because we've already contracted it down to all 4 departments.
3 departments.
3 departments.
Yes.
So Tony, I guess I don't understand where the $33,000,
Most of that is,
Deduct.
it's in the police budget, most of it's,
is that represented in the budget that was presented? 'Cause I don't see
not
it.
entirely, no. We have
You have
to
to square that away.
square it up, yeah. Depends on when one starts and the other ends. We have a little more to do on that.
I don't even see
It's
a,
in,
I don't even see a similar,
I'll tell you exactly
Because
where it
it's,
is.
communications radio, I don't even see a
Probably be a
category for that.
telephone.
Yeah, it's in,
The T1 lines?
They have telephone, cellular, and
it's in, part of
postage.
it's in, it's in communications telephone, part of it's in, repair and maintenance, I believe. They probably didn't really take too much out because there was some question of when one would start and the other would end. So my guess is some of that could probably, a fair amount of that could be taken out of the police budget. That's something we had discussed, Sean and I, about the timing of that and that, you know.
I just wanna make sure I wasn't missing something, so I
No.
didn't see a corresponding.
Not significant, no.
Since this benefits varies, should it be in their budget?
You could split it, it's just that,
Or put-
Sean has taken the lead on identifying the costs and working with the finance department on putting this budget together. And so,
We can put it in another budget.
you could certainly put it into the budget, but someone has to have ownership over, you know, making the calls, if something goes down, I mean, there has to be some, you know, someone has to be,
No, we're already doing
Charge of the
similar
thing.
work.
so. And you care for a fair number of it already, correct? I mean, you
Yeah,
monitor the
so,
sites
yeah,
and.
yeah. But remember, in this new system, we're adding a couple sites. Plus, we have the brand new consoles that are installed over at the PD. So there's
Could
a
certainly be
deduct
part of
there
it
on
at
the
the PD.
savings.
Well, of course, yeah, that goes without saying.
Yeah.
I was thinking more could it go into a town budget
Well,
entirely? Because we've talked about,
Who's gonna watch over it?
we've talked about, well, they can still watch over it, it just,
Yeah.
we've talked about hydrants not necessarily being in their budget either. But that's
I
something
mean,
to
yeah,
talk
it's
about.
still town
We can talk
expense, no
about
matter
it,
where you
yes.
put it.
Yeah,
It's
It's all
not
the
going
same,
anywhere.
it's all the same money.
for a system of this size, you know, a 10% ongoing maintenance charge is pretty standard.
yeah,
No matter what you buy.
Yep.
you know.
okay. But this is gonna work, right? This is gonna be.
This is gonna work.
This is gonna be fantastic,
Yes,
isn't it?
yes.
We'll not have to hear any more about,
No.
you can't talk it to anybody.
Right.
But I think it's also important, right, so it's Public Works, fire and police will be able to coordinate
Yeah, so-
during disasters, during.
Right, so you're gonna have interoperability, and Public Works is gonna be able to communicate. Right now, they're on low band. Low band was big back in the 1970s, somewhat in the 80s, and it basically went out of style in the 90s, and here we are in 2019, and we're finally getting them over to UHF, so it's good. It's where they should be. And the good thing about if we were to do, say, the hardware, just not to elaborate on it, but if we were to keep up with the hardware and this and that, and I talked to them, like the city of Stamford does it, there's a bunch of towns and cities that actually do both, they do the software and hardware. So the city of Stamford's has been in, I think, 10 years, and they've replaced almost every piece of it. So basically, the radio system, this one we can see actually lasting longer than the current system we're on, so, because it's all upgradable. There'll be a point where it becomes obsolete, but not for a long time. And with newer equipment, if we opt to go with the hardware, we keep up with the technology to a point, and the system will probably gain us another, hopefully 5 or 6 years out of the life of it, if not more.
How old is the system now? Yeah, that went
System went
15
in
or
in-
something?
I wanna say it went in
16?
2002, 2003,
2003.
so,
Okay.
It's before the iPhone,
Before iPhones?
I think so.
Thanks.
Another question.
Sure.
This might be for Tony, actually. Volunteer incentives, or we know what that is, that's the bond program.
Right.
Wasn't something passed where they're gonna get a property tax credit or something?
Right.
Tax
That's-
That'll be in the tax calculation.
So that has nothing to do with their budget?
Correct, yeah.
But we should know, we should somewhere put down what it is for people to know.
I can certainly,
Yeah.
identify that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it wouldn't be in their budget,
No,
it's more of a
right.
tax calculation.
It's a tax calculation,
Yeah.
right? Like the senior.
Like the scene, exactly, right.
Okay.
Exactly.
I guess what's happened is we have more volunteers eligible now.
We do. We have a lot, but we had the older generation, some of them have passed away, and now we have the newer generation really coming into it, and the middle generation is now moving up into a different category, but volunteers are up, which is a really good thing, especially when volunteerism's dying across the US. And it's not just about volunteering, the training that has to go into it is unbelievable. I mean, we have 4 people in EMT training right now, and that's a 200-hour program, and that's done in a matter of 5 months. We have more people going to EMT in July. We have 1 person in firefighter 1 right now.
How many hours is that?
Firefighter 1 is roughly 200 hours also, and then, so it's not about just coming and joining, you do whatever right off the hop. You have to go through all the training and everything, so it's quite a bit of work.
Well,
So-
and then,
Does that account for the increase in the 546,
For professional training.
professional development? and
Yes,
training?
yes, yep.
and then the other thing is that in order to maintain and to be in good standing, you have to make a certain percentage of your calls. And-
Right, so you have to
and
be in good
be
standing.
eligible for the programs also, a certain
Correct, so you have to make 20% of fire calls. If you're an active member, you have to make 20% of fire calls, 50% of meetings, 50% of truck crew, 50% designated training, and there's more on that list, so it's quite a bit. To be eligible for the tax abatement, the tax abatement's more of an incentive, and at this point, it's hopefully gonna work out good for the town, because we've had so many calls. If we were to average 450, 500 calls, it's a lot doable. When we start talking in the 750 range, it's a lot more time, a lot more hours. I mean, this weekend alone, the guys were there, started Sunday morning, I wanna say about 7:30 in the morning, and they went home, Monday night. It was a hard 48 hours, so.
So the increase in
And-
the incentives is specifically because of more people
Yeah.
being eligible? Is that,
Mhm.
okay.
More people, and how the program works is there's a pot of money, and what you do is you take all the years of service and then you divide that number, what it comes out to. Let's say it's $100 a year. So if I have 10 years, then I'm gonna get a bond or whatever of $1,000, but it's capped at 30 years. So we have Charlie Whitey has almost 71 years in the department.
out of
He's not
90 of the
getting
department.
71 years of bonds. He gets capped at 30 years. So the max you get capped at is 30. So people don't get an exorbitant amount. They get what's fair, and the rest of the money goes down to the newer guys coming in. So everything's equal across the board.
But with the higher call volume, it's that many more calls that the firefighters need to make in order to be eligible for it. You know, the percentage is the same, but the number's double over the past 3 years.
How many in your roster now?
I want to say there's 47, I want to say. Yeah. Don't hold me to that. I think it's 47, 48, somewhere in that area.
What's your ideal number?
Our ideal is we'd like to hold 60. Remember, daytimes are tough. Years ago, we had the people that worked in town drove the bus. We had the farmers, so even like a Mac Baldwin or whatever would leave work, leave the farm, and leave the golf course, come over and drive the truck. We had Gary McCrum, we had George Dingwall, we had basically the daytime guys and the retired guys that would drive. Now, most of them have passed away, and now we're starting to get the newly retired people, and we're trying to get them to show up more and to take over the driving responsibilities, pumping, and all that. So the tide's shifting slowly. So, and our younger population's starting to get in there really active. So it's good.
It's actually a good feeling to go into the firehouse and see faces that you don't quite recognize, because they're new.
Are there any other items anybody wants to ask about? Maybe just one, I was gonna say, when you want to run through the capital, Sean?
Yeah, sure.
It's standard stuff, but.
Yep. So the
5 items.
minitors, we're always on a minitor replacement. Last year we replaced 21 of them. We have to replace the rest of them this year, so that's what that minitor replacement is. Next year, that line should go back down to, I think, 5 or 6 minitors, so we should be okay back again. But once again, it's, some of the minitors are older, and we need to just catch up a little bit, and that's what that number is. The K-12, a minitor is a pager they carry on the side of their belt. I don't have mine on tonight, of course, but it's a pager they carry on the side of the belt, so when an alarm comes in, it activates the pager, and you hear the tone go off, and you'll know the location and where it's going, and what the call actually is. K-12 rescue saw replacement. It's a 2002 saw. We're having some issues along with the roof saw. The K-12 saw, I don't want to explain it. It's like a saw you see on the side of the road, like when they're cutting pavement, concrete. So this saw cuts pavement, concrete. It also cuts flat roofs, cuts through the rubber membrane. It's got a special blade on it. Cuts through that to make trench cuts and to cut block, concrete, whatever we need to do. Or a metal guardrail up on the parkway or in town to free somebody from a vehicle. The roof saw is when we have a structure fire and the guys have to go up on the roof and cut a hole. It's usually a 4x4 hole, and it's basically a regular chainsaw. It's got a guard on it, a depth guard it's called, where you judge how deep you have to cut, because you don't want to cut all the way through the roof rafter so you don't fall in. So it's gauged on how deep you want to cut. You want to just cut through the shingle and through the plywood and then be able to knock it out. It's got a carbide tip chain on it, so if you use your regular chainsaw to cut a hole in the roof, you would dull it as soon as you touch it. It's like hitting a rock in your yard when you're cutting up a tree or something, and you hit a rock and the chain dulls. This chain is not designed to dull. It's designed to cut through the asphalt shingles and everything else to get right through it. It's more for roof ventilation. A Ram ventilation fan. It's a 1999. It's due for a replacement. We're having some electrical issues with it. Reason why it's $5,200, and the fire commission I think had the same question, is they can't believe a fan would cost $5,200. Welcome to the fire service. Everything in the fire service is like 4 times what you should be paying for it. It's a smoke ejector basically at a fire, or if we have a carbon monoxide incident. There's always like an LEL, like a lower explosive limit, a hazardous limit. So the fan has to be intrinsically safe. So almost everything we buy is intrinsically safe, including the radios. So if you go into a hazardous location and you key up the mic, we're not going to have a problem where we're going to have a fire or an explosion or something like that.
It's not gonna spark.
We're paying for a heavy duty fan that's intrinsically safe, and that is across the fire service. So it's nothing elaborate. It's basically a 24 by 24 box, and it's got a metal fan blade in it. So.
It's not your $20 drugstore fan, box fan.
Yeah, just to put it in perspective, you can go to Home Depot and buy the best ladder you can for like $3.99. Our ladders are costing $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 when we go buy a ladder, because they have to all be certified and for fire and everything else. So.
And the other thing is the ventilation fan is something that gets used regularly.
The Stream light box, the ventilation fan, he's right. The ventilation fan gets used quite often. CO calls, structure fires, cooking from smoke, smoke from cooking, a bunch of things it gets used for. The other thing is the Streamlight box replacement. Those are basically the flashlights that clip onto the truck, and what happens over time is they wear out because they get used so much, and they're basically plastic. When you go to put them back in, they don't really sit well after time, so they don't charge, and then they get beat up. I mean, the lights are almost 17 years old, and there's 20 of them that need to be replaced. So it's not all the lights in the department on all the trucks, it's just a couple of the trucks that are older that need to be replaced.
And they also have to be intrinsically safe.
The lights also have to be intrinsically safe. Everything, almost everything in the fire service is intrinsically safe.
That's why they're $130 each.
So.
in regards to the minitors, is that
Yep.
a technology that you think will not become obsolete? And it sounds like a modern day pager, essentially.
It won't become obsolete because, I mean, everybody still uses them. You need them to be notified right off the hop. We also have a program where it rings, it's called e-dispatch. It rings to your cell phone and you can hear it. There is a delay by the time the tone goes out to the time it gets onto your phone rings. It's usually about, I'm gonna say 30 to 45 seconds, so there is that time delay. Once they stop talking and the monitor and the unit shuts down, then it'll take that message and it calls like 50 numbers.
But that's a
to let you
recording.
know. But that's it's a backup to your actual pager. Now your cell phone, what's nice about it is if you're out of range of your monitor, because it's like your radio, you have to be basically in the town area or right outside the town limits. With your phone, you could be anywhere and you could still get the call. So if you're over it and you don't have great coverage, your phone's gonna ring, you could still respond even though you got the call 30 or 45 seconds later, you could still respond and maybe get the second or the third truck going out. But you could come back and help. Where before we didn't have that technology, we had it, but you had to send when we all had alpha pagers, you had to wait for that message to come through and that could take 2 minutes.
So the miniature is not really like a pager. You actually hear the voice.
It's a
of-
voice pager is
It's a
what it
voice
is.
pager.
But
so
it's
you hear
but
the-
you're getting a live radio broadcast from the dispatchers on it.
Yeah.
And so it's a radio that lies dormant and then is activated when the tone goes out. Unlike, so the firefighters don't carry their radios at all times because the officers will have them in their cars, but they don't, because otherwise the radio might be going off constantly. You're not going to hear the radio when you're sleeping.
They don't carry their portables
You're
with
not,
them.
you're
That's
not
what
taking
the
it to
pagers
work
are
with
for.
you.
Just to Andrew's question, just, this is what everybody's using. In other words, there's no leading edge technology that some of the departments are moving toward that would make these obsolete. So
Not
this
at this
is what
time.
everybody, this is
it.
what everybody does.
Yeah,
Volunteer
there is
department.
nothing.
No, and the delayed record, so as we said, the delayed recording that goes to your cell phone is backup or when you're out of range of the radio, but it's not a good substitute for it. It's helpful. That's what I get. It's helpful.
Any other questions?
Just in regards to the data processing and the computer line items, are those at some point going to be forwarded into the IT? I know that we have an IT.
Data processing line, we're waiting for the report to come back to
Right.
figure out how we're gonna move forward.
But there is potential for us to.
There's some, yes, there's potential for us to combine, stuff to move forward on that. We're just waiting for that report, Sean indicated.
Right.
Have we taken care of the coverage problem from signal that we used to have in town?
We still have that problem, and when the new radio system goes on, it should be operational probably the end of May, the beginning of June. It might be operational before that, but we really can't use it only because we wanna test the system when the leaves are on the trees. So we can figure that, so we know if the system's at its optimal, where it should be optimally.
There was some coverage, if I remember the presentation.
We're still gonna have some dead spots
Some
like
dead
like
spots,
Joe's
but
house over
not
there.
took care of a lot of them.
Joe offered property on his land to put up a small little tower at no cost to the town, very generous.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, Board of Selectmen, Beth is not ready.
Right, we're almost ready, but
Almost ready.
we're doing a grant
So we'll
and
do
some
the-
other things, so
we'll
we're
do
gonna
that
do
next
next
Tuesday.
Tuesday, thank you.
Okay. Probate, nah, that's contractual, 1120, let's just take a look.
1140.
Probate is 1120.
No, it's time for you to say not much there.
Not much there. 12.5. Actually, it went down, so that's a good thing. Okay. General administration, 1140, which is, biggest
It's
part of that
basically,
is insurance.
It's insurance, liability insurance. We're anticipating a relatively flat, soft market for the municipal insurance, but we'll have a better idea of that as we go through the process, and we'll update accordingly. Other items are utilities for town hall, basically, and so the one that we're hoping to get some, we're replacing a lot of fixtures with LED lights, and so we're hoping that some of our electric use will go down. It's campus-wide, including the school, so we may have some opportunities there, but we're not 100% sure yet, so.
Okay. Any questions on general administration? Information systems, which is the next tab.
Okay, in information systems, we're moving towards a, more of a combined operation. The, first item there is, the data processing line. That's what we pay Amity to do, the IT at the town hall and the, police department. And, so as a result, that number is based on our actual usage, so the original budget for this year was what we anticipated, and it's gone up a little bit as there's been, you know, the Amity's doing a number of things for us, and so far, it's been successful. We've learned a lot from the process, and you know, we're becoming more efficient with our operation, and so that's been very helpful. I think they're understanding our network and our computer layout. We're doing this project where we're identifying all of our network, and they're doing a lot of recommendations on some upgrades. So we're, you know, something we want to stay on the. We don't want to get caught, you know, not investing in our infrastructure and with all those threats that exist. We're very conscious of that.
So how does this, I don't know, get reflected with the police? Because they have 41,000 in their budget for data processing. One of their officers is an IT person.
So in the police department, they have data processing is mainly for subscriptions to Next Gen and Collect and all of the software programs that they have.
Okay.
That's what that's for. That's not
So
to pay a firm.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And the sergeant that does IT is now, I believe he's in the second shift. So he's doing more police duties. And the idea, anyway, as we go on, more police duties and less IT. That's sort of the idea, is to go from 100% to maybe 20-30% of his time on IT.
Okay.
And so we're making progress there. It's a learning curve, and there's some.
Right, it takes time.
Takes time to, you know, make that happen.
Okay.
Now, the fire department data processing budget is almost equal to or more than everything you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Is it so that there should be some?
They have a firm they use, that, you know, we're hoping, you know, that we can take that next step here once we, as we go on. I know we're looking to, combine our, we all have server upgrades to do, and we're looking to combine those between the three of us. And the town hall and the fire department can combine because there are no issues with data privacy. Police department has to have some of their some of their data separate from the rest of us because of privacy rules and you know. So they may still have some of theirs over at the police, but we're looking to sort of optimize that where whatever we can take and combine with the town. And so it's actually, we've come a long way in the past couple of years from where we were having three separate silos.
Absolutely.
We're all sort of talking to each other and working together. So, yeah.
Thank you, that was very good.
Yeah. So, so that's that second line. The other item is software maintenance, and that's primarily due, as those of you who have software support, you know that that's something that never goes down, but always goes up. And so that's basically the issue. This one in particular is the building official software. That's the one that we're increased the most. It's a cloud-based permitting software that's we're using. We're starting down at the building office. Those are pretty much the main items. We spend a lot of time in the information systems, making sure that we're protecting our data, and we train employees to be aware of the things that, you know, are out there and the simple things to do to try to avoid infecting our network.
Don't
Yeah,
forward things.
Amity's been helpful in providing training seminars to our employees.
Just out of curiosity, you routinely test to see if people are falling for some of the traps. So my old job was to do that for amount.
Interesting.
Every once
I
in a
get
while.
those tests like a couple
Yeah.
times a week.
Yeah.
Wow.
The spear fishing.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
And then you get this little notification saying you shouldn't have opened that.
Yeah.
Thank you
Right.
very
You
much.
failed.
Which actually is pretty helpful, because then people realize.
Right. We've done a little bit of that, yeah.
Thanks for the heads up.
Okay,
This
anything
not
else?
gonna open any of her email
Yeah,
from now
no,
on.
that's it. Jerry Shaw, doing them all.
Anything else on information systems?
No, that's it.
Finance department? You can explain why the regular assistants went down, so,
The finance department is,
1150.
150, yeah. We eliminated the payroll position. And we eliminated payroll position, which was, so now we have three. We have Karen and then accounts payable and myself, but no payroll. So payroll was split up amongst a few different employees. Kelly does a little bit in Public Works, Karen does some in the tax office. So that, and
It's working well.
That's great.
It was almost, it was seamless.
it was.
It was just wonderful.
At least we made it look like it was seamless, right,
Okay.
Karen?
Okay, just seeing where I was sitting, it looked great. It was wonderful.
Good job.
Just went without a hitch.
Right. And so, that's why that's reduced. So we're trying to encourage other departments to find ways to be more efficient and do more with less, and try to think creatively to perhaps change staffing around and change some of your assumptions that maybe you were always using, that you can change a little. And you've seen some examples tonight with well, you'll see one with the library has done it, and rec, and Brad, and building maintenance. There's just some examples.
That's great.
Yep.
Progress.
Yep.
The study's here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We handed out the study.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that-
good, yeah.
police
Yes,
department
it's in the
staffing
file.
study was handed out.
The last one is revenue. It's in its. I think I have enough. I hope I have enough.
Nothing here.
This is, the last department is revenue. I just wanted to go through that a little.
We don't have a grand list yet, do we?
Not yet. She'll have it on next Thursday. The 31st is usually when she's complete.
I'm sure it's not gonna be much.
Probably not.
No.
So, some of the highlights here. The first is that intergovernmental revenue I haven't changed from last year because we haven't heard anything yet. So that could be in for some surprises. We'll stay tuned on that. Compared to some towns, we don't get all that much.
Yeah.
So, I'll let you know as soon as I hear on that. And department charges, there's a couple of things for you to, just to highlight. One is the outdoor pool. You can see that was $120,996 in last year's budget, and it's now zero. There's a corresponding savings in expenses, but it's not 120, it's 91, 92. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. Second is, and this is still a work in progress, but the transfer station fees. You can see that goes up from 50 to about 130. And we're still sort of tweaking that number, but I think that's a pretty good start. Maybe somewhat conservative, but I think that's where we're thinking that's probably close to where it should be. Those are the major items in the department charges. the school resource officer in Amity, that's a number that's based off of the actual expenditures of the officer in that position, so that changes based on who's staffing that position.
Is Bethany paying us, Tony?
So we're paid by the school, Amity.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
It's in the Amity's budget, that's
Yeah.
right.
So, let's see, interest income is increased by a significant amount. Let's see. Those are the major highlights. The last one is the Amity surplus funds. I kept that the same as the previous year. As you all know, we received quite a bit in the current year, but I didn't change that number in this. That's
a good idea.
Number. Keep in mind, every dollar you increase that by, you're not going to have the following year.
Yeah.
So you just have to be aware of that.
And at the rate Beecher's deficit is growing.
Right. That's the other issue is we don't know what our liabilities are going to be this year. So you could always use that to, anyway.
Well, hopefully we can use some of it maybe
for some capital or something.
Yeah, some capital, speed it up and take it
Right.
out of the budget.
That's that was what I was thinking too.
All right, any other questions? Okay. Next Tuesday, we got the big one coming in, so order that. We will see you then.
Listen, I'm talking, love that you had it out to me.